Chapter 1521, Ushioni. Wichiro Maeda finished speaking and reached up to remove his gold-rimmed glasses. Hiss. The civilized suit on his body was directly shattered, and his strong muscles expanded like a balloon. Wichiro Maeda's body was becoming huge at an unimaginable speed. His skin began to turn black, and even grew thick and long hairs. His face was twisting, and his bones were making screech noises as they turned. A pair of long, thick horns drilled out from his frontal bone, and his lower legs were replaced by 8 spider-like legs. Boom! A monster that was over 50 meters tall and possessed the head of an ox, the body of a human, and 8 spider legs suddenly appeared in front of Deng Shintong. He looked down at Deng Shintong and spewed out 2 clouds of searing hot air from among his nostrils. Come on, miscellaneous cultivator. Watch Lao Zi tear you apart. The captain of the Royal Demon Court's second team, Wichiro Maeda, codenamed Bull Ghost. Beast-type ability user, 9,900 points of supernatural ability index. Feeling the sense of oppression brought about by the giant beast in front of him, Deng Shintong's eyes were filled with gravity, but at the same time, the corners of his mouth couldn't stop hooking up. It looks like my judgment was right. Dragon specimens really do have the potential to help mutants tap into their upper limits. Otherwise, how could so many high-level mutants appear in Tiny Neon? Then let's fight. In all directions, the war was already in full swing. In particular, the battle between Zhang Yi and the evil demon under Mount Fudo, as well as the heated battle between Flower and a cat intercepting the entire 100 Demon Night Parade, were enough to make one's blood boil. May the light bless you and me. Bright salute. Deng Shintong's body, his supernatural energy blazed up, and he illuminated everything around him like a 1,000,000-watt light bulb, too dazzling to the point of depriving everyone around him of their vision. Originally, the surrounding Royal Demon Court mutants wanted to step forward to help, but as a result, at this time, they were also unable to confirm Deng Shintong's position at all, not to mention not daring to attack easily. They had to block out the light and then retreat in other directions at a rapid pace. A bellowing cry rang out in the mountains and forests. Your opponents are here, dog mongrels. The mutants followed the sound and only saw a 3-meter-tall black humanoid mech appear in the middle of Bai Li Changqing, Wu Di, and the others who had formed a circle. Ka-ching! Ka-ching! The chest, shoulders, and waist of the mech suddenly opened a hatch, revealing hundreds of densely packed firing holes. The second-generation mech that Liu Karen had built for Uncle Yu. The Great Wall of Flame, Giant God Soldier No. 2. In front of Uncle Yu's eyes, the top of the tactical mask had locked onto all the mutants around him. He excitedly pressed the launcher in his hand. Give me a vicious kill. In the next moment, Giant God Soldier 2 was like a firework, shooting out a dazzling beam of bullet fire. The miniature flying bullets locked onto the enemy's location and instantly poured out. The Royal Demon Court mutants felt fear when they saw the densely packed flying bullets flying towards them as if they had eyes. They desperately fled towards the distance, while some of them did not believe that this kind of hot weapon would pose a threat to them and unleash their own abilities to fend it off. But they forgot. Ordinary thermal weapons were useless to them, and that was because Neon wasn't allowed to have their own troops, making them belittle the usefulness of thermal weapons. Huashu Kingdom's weapon iterations, on the other hand, had long exceeded their imagination. All of the weapons configured by Zhang Yi's squad were exclusive to mutants, and they were certainly more powerful and possessed special magic-breaking materials. So the rain of bullets poured down, directly triggering an extremely magnificent explosion amongst this mountain forest of Mount Fudo. Within a radius of 10 kilometers, all the snow was melted by the Gaowen in an instant, and a large number of neon mutants died tragically. Even those that didn't die instantly were burned by the prairie fire and gradually died amidst miserable wailing. This wave of attacks went down, killing at least 30 or so neon mutants. Uncle Yu closed the firing silo. This means of wide-range attack could only be used once, as the amount of ammunition did not support it. However, soon after, he pulled out a 2-meter-long alloy battle sword from his back, and the mecha gun in his left hand was still cautiously aimed at the surroundings. The ferocity of the attacked neon mutants was ignited, and they roared angrily as they surrounded the area once again. And naturally, the first thing to be unleashed was a long-range attack. A female mutant with a long ponytail made diamond-shaped hand seals with both hands, summoning a huge ball of flame in the air and smashing it over towards the direction where Uncle Yu and the others were. The fireball grew larger and larger, and in the end, it turned into an oversized sphere with a diameter of hundreds of meters. Fatty Sue hurriedly blocked in front as he took a deep breath and then spewed it out with force. Blizzard! Cold streams of blowing breath gushed out from his mouth, carrying an intense storm as the temperature around him plummeted. As the cold stream crashed into the fireball, the searing temperature was soon contained hard and quickly dissipated in midair. The other party's numbers are a bit high. We alone will have to deal with at least hundreds of neon mutants. Bai Li Changqing twisted his fist before pulling out a wolf fang mace. To a strengthened inhuman like him who was known for his strength, a blunt weapon could be more useful than a sword. Because with a single blow of the stick, he could smash his opponent into meat paste, or at the very least, internal injuries. Wu Di laughed coldly as he raised his hands, and one after another light clusters emerged around his body. Densely packed, it was as high as thousands. Then let's compare who has killed more today. As soon as his words fell, the floating cannons around his body immediately shot out in all directions, with a high-frequency output method that transformed him into a human-sized machine gun. Every single floating cannon that fell would cause tremendous destruction. Although this batch of mutants were all elites, the ones who came here today at the very least possessed vice-captain level strength, with a supernatural ability index of 9,000 points or more. So in the face of Uncle Yu and the others' attacks, the neon mutants with slightly lower strengths had no way to block them. However, just as Wu Di was unhurriedly killing those mutants by long-range means, a coldness suddenly came from his back. A slight stinging pain came from the back of his heart. The sense of death crisis instantly enveloped Wu Di's heart. At the critical moment, Bai Li Changqing let out a roar, and the wolf fang mace broke through the air and smashed behind Wu Di. Only then did Wu Di feel the crisis of death disappear, and his entire body was already drenched in sweat. He looked at Bai Li Changqing and quickly scanned the surrounding area, all without realizing where the enemy was. Bai Li Changqing said to him, "You almost died just now. What kind of person did that?" Wu Di's face had a look of ruthlessness, but his subconscious swallowing still revealed the fear within him. Chapter 1522 Drifting Blade. Bai Li Changqing's eyes gazed around and said to Wu Di in a deep voice, "An illusory shadow suddenly appeared behind you just now, and that sword almost killed you." On Wu Di's back, the combat suit was easily pierced through, and blood had seeped out from the back of his heart. That strike was so sudden that even everyone around him did not perceive it. On the other side, there is an extremely strong assassination-type mutant. Everyone should be careful. Bai Li Changqing said so. Everyone was instantly alerted. The means of such a silent attack was indeed numbing to one's scalp. Fatty Sue sniffed and took the initiative to speak. "Let me try." He clasped his hands together, and the snowflakes around him instantly flew up, centering on a few people. It swept rapidly towards the surroundings. As long as it's a human-type creature, even if it can conceal its movements, it will definitely leave traces in the midst of the snowflakes flying in the sky. Fatty Sue cast his ability while keeping a deadly eye on the surrounding movements with his gaze. Sure enough, soon in the direction to the side of the crowd, the snowflakes highlighted a human figure. Without hesitation, Uncle Yu raised his gun and aimed a round of fierce fire in that direction. Yet the humanoid figure only appeared for a brief moment before disappearing in place. However, the appearance of the other party was enough to make Bai Li Changqing and the others not dare to underestimate the enemy anymore. On the side of the Royal Demon Court foreigners, they also realized that this group of Huashu Kingdom foreigners were strong and not something that ordinary foreigners could fight against. Among the royal demon court inhumans, a bald man with a tall figure and a huge string of rosary beads around his neck stood out. All mutants below the vice captains of the fans retreat. These guys are not something you guys can deal with. You guys wait at the back for orders to act. The large number of mutants immediately cautiously retreated backward after hearing this. Only 3 mutants remained in place, forming a standoff with Bai Li Changqing and the others. The first squad's vice captain, Bodhidharma, a huge man with a stout body like a tower. The second team's vice captain, Kamita Kimi, a strange man with a stooped, dry and thin frame and thinning hair. The third team's vice captain, Chio Kagami. A female mutant dressed in a black suit with a long ponytail and a large number of grenades hanging from her body. However, Bai Li Changqing and the others knew clearly that the truly dangerous guy was actually the mutant who could be invisible and godlike. Bodhidharma silently pulled out a folding finger tiger from his pocket and then put it on his huge right hand. The first to strike was the slender-looking female mutant, Chio Kagami. Her hands swiftly traced through the air as if she were tapping on a keyboard, igniting a huge flame with each strike. A few moments later, hundreds of flames shot up into the sky before turning into huge fireballs that headed straight for Bai Li Changqing and the others. The flames shot up into the sky, and the sky area of thousands of meters was all filled with giant fireballs that were more than 10 meters in diameter. Then they fell down like meteors. The blazing temperature scorched the earth. Even wearing a combat suit one could feel the terrifying temperature. Release department ability, Riotous Starfire. Let me do it. Fatty Sue continued to output. The blizzard ability could control ice and snow, lowering the surrounding temperature on a wide scale. Nowadays, after a long period of exercise, he was long gone. Perhaps when encountering a captain level or above mutant, his performance was very worrisome. But when fighting a sub-captain level mutant, there was a huge amount of space to play with. His hands clasped together, and the ice and snow between the heaven and earth around him whistled and condensed, and along with it, the temperature within the entire area dropped. Gale force winds gathered with his body as the center, and a huge tornado rolled backwards into the sky, ruthlessly slamming into the fireball in the air. The extremely cold temperature and the blazing flames were dissipating each other, and a large amount of steam turned into rain and fell the moment it appeared, before being vaporized once again. Just at this time, a loud roar came from the mountains and forests on one side. Roar dash. The gigantic trees on Mount Fudo that had been growing for hundreds of years were mercilessly crashed through, and an ice and snow condensed into a hundreds of meters long auger dragon roared as it pounced on Fatty Sue. Bai Li Changqing, holding a wolf fang mace, was the first to charge up as the barrier amongst the group, and lashed out viciously with his rod. Iron Fist. Boom! The wolf fang mace fiercely lashed at the head of the ice and snow scaly dragon. Although the difference in size was huge, Bai Li Changqing, who was known as the Iron Fist, had incredibly strong wrist strength. This rod directly smashed the ice and snow Jiaolong into pieces. However, in the next moment, from amongst the shattered auger, a spike with chains protruded, stabbing at Bai Li Changqing's eyes. Bai Li Changqing's strike had used up all his strength, and this was the moment when his strength was weak and his figure was unstable. In the face of the other party's sudden attack, his pupil shrunk violently, and he was only able to try his best to dodge. Pfft! The chain dart sliced through his combat uniform and slashed across his head, directly grazing his temple as it passed, bringing down a large trail of blood. If Bai Li Changqing wasn't a mutant with extremely strong defense, this strike would have been enough to cut off half of his head. But even so, he felt his skull being rubbed hard by something, almost drying his head through. It's that guy again. Bai Chunyu hadn't made a move, he was waiting for a perfect opportunity. At this moment, the man in the dark struck again, finally giving him the perfect opportunity. His body surged with supernatural energy, and his entire body shattered apart in an instant, scattering with the wind. Drifting blade. Bai Chunyu merged into the air, blending into the ice and snow flying in the sky, spreading out towards that area. Each piece of ice and snow was a sharp blade, cutting through all existences within the area. Under this indiscriminate attack, nothing was able to conceal its tracks. Finally, the assassin hiding in the shadows showed his true face. It was a long-haired woman wearing a dark red leather jacket with dark pupils that took up almost the entirety of her eyes, and she had many pockets on her body that were placed at her waist, chest and side of her thighs. It was a woman in standard ninja dress. Captain of the Royal Demon Court's third team, Tamamonome, Purgatory Star. Trait System Mutant, 9,600 points of Supernatural Ability Index. Bai Chunyu's attack caused her to reveal herself. However, in the next moment, she made a seal with one hand, gusty flight. Whistling winds surged around her body, blocking the ice and snow flying in the sky. Bai Chunyu, who was incarnated in millions at this moment, smiled in his heart when he saw this familiar move. When I fought that neon sumo wrestler earlier, I had already discovered where this weakness lies. You didn't think that I would fall in the same place twice, did you? The blade of ice and snow flowed along the gale, but utilized the power of the storm to accelerate its own rotation, then shot out from amongst the gale to make its attack even more ferocious. Borrowing strength to fight, this move caught even Purgatory Star a little off guard. But she didn't panic in the slightest, reaching out and taking out a red bullet from her waist pocket, then throwing it hard at her feet. A raging ball of fiery flames rose up from beneath her feet and surged towards the surroundings. Chapter 1523, 3rd Vice Squad. The Ice and Snow Department and Flames had always restrained each other, and Bai Chunyu lost his direction for a time as the flames obscured his target. By the time he tried his best to extinguish the flames in front of him, the Purgatory Star was long gone. The messy drifting blades fluttered in the air, and in the next instant, a thick poisonous smoke emerged from not far away, covering Bai Chunyu's direction. Bai Chunyu's heart secretly said that it was bad. Although he wouldn't be killed by the poisonous gas in his 10 million incarnations, after being contaminated with a large amount of poisonous fog, it would definitely affect his mobility. And, it might trigger chronic poisoning. Before being unable to confirm the location of the Purgatory Star, it was pointless to continue maintaining the falling snow state. He had to resume his human form and then quickly retreat. But the next moment, that feeling of being targeted by a poisonous snake surfaced from his heart. It was the same as Wudi's, the feeling of a chill at the back of his heart. Bai Chunyu had been on guard, but Purgatory Star's speed was simply too fast. Being proficient in many types of ninjutsu, her attacks made it impossible to defend. A handful of bittersweet stabbed at the back of Bai Chunyu's head. If Bai Chunyu transformed into the drifting blade, he would have to face the consequences of being stained by the poisonous mist, but without transforming, it would be difficult for him to be able to dodge this sword. Bai Li Changqing was already injured, and the others were too far away to support him. Bai Chunyu clenched his teeth and could only choose to split his body again. He fell into the thick green poisonous miasma, and the white snowflake blade was quickly dyed dark green. In less than 30 seconds' time, both vice captains had received considerable injuries. Although they were also existences with a 9,000+ supernatural ability index, the gap between them and Purgatory Star was very obvious. After all, among the important factors that determine the relationship between victory and defeat of the mutants, Purgatory Star still held an absolute geographical advantage. On the other hand, Chio Kagami's attacks continued to be launched against Bai Li Changqing and the others. Fatty Sue was locked in a stalemate with her, and he had to block every falling riot star flame in time. Otherwise, it would be even more difficult for Bai Li Changqing and the others around him to deal with Purgatory Star's attacks. Going on like this is not a solution. That difficult female ninja must be dealt with first. Bai Chunyu had easily escaped back, and after taking human form, he was in a very weak state. Although he had injected himself with an antivirus potion in time, the weakness of his body was difficult to reverse. It was only possible to forcefully utilize the military euphoria potion to maintain his combat state. Is there any good way? Bai Li Changqing touched the right side of his head with his hand, he could feel it, the deep dent in his brain shell. Wu Di spoke up at this moment, if it's just to avoid having her stealthily come over and attack us, I do have a way. He took a deep breath, and suddenly, an intense white light surged around his body, and his head full of hair flew in disarray due to the outburst of his supernatural energy. From his body, just like blowing bubbles, one after another tiny floating light shadows rapidly emerged. In just an instant, the area around him was completely covered by floating cannons. Star River Shower. Wu Di shouted lowly, and all the floating cannons instantly shot in all directions before hovering in 100 meters of space within his center. In all directions, there were even some that sank into the dirt underground. This move, he had once researched specifically to deal with Zhang Yi's space supernatural ability. Within a wide range, this move worked very well against mutants who were flexible in movement but did not possess strong defense. Next, if Purgatory Star tried to raid the crowd again, it would definitely be discovered. Wu Di said, I can maintain this state for about 10 minutes. I won't be able to participate in the battle next, so I'll rely on you guys on how to defeat them. Bai Li Changqing nodded, you've been a great help with that. In the dark, Purgatory Star looked at the floating cannons in front of her that were like a sea of stars, and also frowned slightly. Her most powerful means were ninjutsu and assassination. However, in terms of defense, she was not good at it and was a standard brittle assassin. Forcing her way through Wu Di's killing moves would also cause considerable damage to her. After all, today's Wu Di was also a vice captain level expert with an ability index of 9,300 points. Although on the surface, Purgatory Star's strength exceeded that of Bai Li Changqing and the others present. However, even Fatty Su and Uncle Yu, who seemed to be the weakest, had been hardened by Zhang Yi and piled up with resources to a level above 9,000 points. It was still very difficult for her alone to quickly kill them all. But the good thing was, she wasn't fighting alone either. You guys make a move and create an opportunity for me to do it. Purgatory Star gave the order to the Bodhidharma several people to strike. The three who received the order glanced at each other. Afterward, they struck out without hesitation. Yes. Bodhidharma came straight at him like a cannonball, and the first opponent he chose was Bai Li Changqing. He could see that the other party was the absolute defense barrier amongst the team, and had to be the first to be resolved. Uncle Yu's heavy mech wasn't very convenient to move in the midst of the snow halfway up the mountain, and was only able to fight at close range, as well as provide support as a long-range heavy firepower. He directly raised his gun and aimed it at the running Bodhidharma, a small flying bullet shot directly over. Bodhidharma's running speed was too fast, and when he saw this, he didn't dodge, he directly roared, and slammed his fist against the flying bullet. Powerful supernatural energy wrapped around his entire body, especially his right fist that wore a finger tiger. The supernatural energy made his fist turn into a huge sphere, directly slamming into the head of the flying bullet. Boom! A violent explosion rang out, and the earth in the surrounding area was overturned. But Bodhidharma scurried out from the middle of the smoke and dust as if nothing had happened. Just like Bai Li Changqing, he was an extreme reinforcement inhuman. This kind of mutant had no extra abilities, but the strength of his physical body was strong to a terrifying degree. Bai Li Changqing held up his wolf Fang Changqing, and without hesitation, he roared angrily and blocked in front of the crowd, battling with Bodhidharma doors. On the other hand, Kamita Kimi, who had never made a move from the side, swept his gaze sorrowfully over the crowd. No one knew what this guy's ability was, but right now, Bai Li Changqing and the others' attention was drawn to several other mutants. Especially with that Purgatory Star with the superb assassination ability in the shadows watching over them, they had no time to spread their extra attention over Kamita Kimi. He was like a venomous snake hidden in the shadows, searching for his prey. Finally, he locked onto his target. It was none other than Bai Li Changqing who was fighting Bodhidharma. He smiled sorrowfully, then his body unexpectedly shortened as if he had no bones, and soon he disappeared into thin air. Even the clothes he was wearing faded away, and no one knew what he had done. Purgatory Star had been observing Bai Li Changqing and the others' vulnerabilities in the outer area. Those hundreds of thousands of floating cannons had indeed prevented her from striking out to attack and kill in a short period of time. But she likewise had a way to consume them. She took out a sheet of detonation talisman paper from inside her belt pouch, lit it up and threw it at the area, and soon there were successive explosions ringing out, with flames reaching the sky. A large number of floating cannons were consumed by her. Chapter 1524 War Machine God. With strong enemies outside, the pressure that Purgatory Star brought to the crowd was simply too great. The several major war powers were being held back for various reasons, and for a time, they simply couldn't think of how to break the situation, and were only able to put up a good defense first. The collision between Bai Li Changqing and Bodhidharma was simple and brutal. It was all fist-to-flesh sparring, and the fight almost shook the ground. The earth was constantly shattering because it couldn't withstand their power, and soon the mountainous ground underneath the duo's feet appeared as an indented deep pit. But just when the two were in the middle of their battle, the ground under Bai Li Changqing's feet suddenly cracked, and a black shadow violently attacked towards his thighs. The battle between Bai Li Changqing and Bodhidharma was momentarily difficult to distinguish between the two, and the sudden attack was too late to defend himself, and soon his body was wrapped in a long, thick, sticky thing. It was a dark earthworm-like thing, covered in mucus, crawling onto Bai Li Changqing's body and began to strangle hard. For a time, Bai Li Changqing felt that all of his internal organs were being strongly squeezed. Ho! Bodhidharma slammed his fist hard into Bai Li Changqing's chest, and Bai Li Changqing had to scramble to block it. However, his body was entangled, making it difficult for him to send out his strength, and he was directly smashed heavily on his chest by the finger tiger. With this blow, he heard the sound of his sternum breaking, and his entire body was sent flying hundreds of meters away like a cannonball, ruthlessly plunging into the wall of a deep underground pit. Kamita Kimi wrapped his body around Bai Li Changqing's body to death and taunted him, "How about it? Do you want to try being strangled to death? Mutant of Huashu Kingdom yo!" It looked like a pure mollusk at this moment, but don't be fooled by the illusion. That soft and slimy-looking body possessed strong muscles with a first-class strangulation ability. Bai Li Changqing gritted his teeth, while the Bodhidharma in front of him had already rushed over in between, wanting to whack Bai Li Changqing to death in one breath. However, there were already others around who reacted. Uncle Yu jumped in front of Bodhidharma in his giant divine warrior, and the huge metal giant sword in his hand slashed down on his head. Bodhidharma was not sure of Uncle Yu's strength and only thought of his mech as a mobile turret, so he directly raised the finger tiger in his hand and blocked it. As a result of this, the giant sword slashed directly on top of his finger tiger. Bang! The powerful collision of forces caused a terrifying shockwave to surge underneath the duo's feet, and the ground chafed open like a spider web, sinking once again. Bodhidharma only felt his arm bones tingling, and the most terrifying thing was that his fingers were flowing with blood. This guy. He raised his head in disbelief and looked up at the giant god soldier. What he didn't know was that although Uncle Yu's talent wasn't as good as Bai Li Changqing's, who made him Zhang Yi's respected senior and trusted partner. Even if a person with the worst talent was given so many resources to cultivate him and had the world's first-rate mecha masters to create a customized mecha for him, it would make him incomparably strong. If he wasn't limited by geography, Uncle Yu could have killed a madman with a giant divine warrior alone. Playing close combat with him? It's simply looking for death. Without waiting for Bodhidharma to react, the chest of the giant divine warrior suddenly opened a launching hatch, and the Yuan stone reactor was activated. A huge amount of energy quickly built up, and then aimed at Bodhidharma's torso and fiercely blasted out. Within arm's reach, Bodhidharma was caught off guard and was directly struck in the chest by the energy cannon, like a heavy sandbag being blown away. At this time, Bai Li Changqing also exerted his utmost efforts and broke free of Kamita Kimi's bonds. Kamita Kimi jumped out as far as a spring, and then fell to the ground on all fours. At this moment, he looked like a big earthworm with 4 limbs, covered in disgusting mucus. Bai Li Changqing panted and said to Uncle Yu, "Thanks." Uncle Yu hemmed and hawed, "It's nothing. Now we are comrades side by side, let's finish these guys in front of us first." Bai Li Changqing raised his arm, but suddenly realized that the movement of his arm was greatly restricted. Looking down, he realized that he had been left with a large amount of slime on his body by Kamita Kimi. And those originally transparent mucus, at this time, rapidly turned white and sticky, as if it was like a strong glue. Bai Li Changqing frowned and pulled with all his might, but as a result, the slime actually stuck his arms and the combat uniform on his body together, and he couldn't even tear it away with all his desperation. "Don't waste your efforts, these white/cloudy liquids are the essence of my body. The adhesive ability is first class, you won't be able to break it off," Kamita Kimi said while proudly placing her hands on her waist and triumphantly jerking her waist. Bai Li Changqing's face turned green. He struggled to tear, and surprisingly, he ripped the combat uniform off his body. In the end, he directly tore the upper half of his body, revealing his fit and majestic body. Kamita Kimi stuck out his snake-like slender tongue and licked his lips. "Very good. Such a robust body, if it gets dirty from my slime, will you tear off your own skin?" "Ha ha ha." After he finished speaking, his body quickly dug into the ground. Uncle Yu said, "I'll leave this guy to me." His mechanical right arm was inserted into the ground, and then 4 fixed brackets were bullet out to stabilize the body. Then, a microwave pulse bullet was shot directly into the ground. Continuous shockwaves spread out in all directions along Uncle Yu, and the entire ground shattered in an instant, shattering the earth and rocks. Soon, Kamita Kimi let out a miserable wail and jumped out from above the ground. He didn't have ears, only 2 small ear holes, but at this moment, blood was flowing outward in a milky stream. That unsightly body had also obviously suffered a heavy blow. At this time, layers of sticky flesh kept writhing to ease the impact of Uncle Yu's attack. Mutants, too, are nothing more than more powerful humans. As long as the weapons can be continuously upgraded, it will similarly cause great damage to mutants. Uncle Yu revealed a mouthful of white teeth as he stretched out his right hand towards Kamita Kimi, and a dozen flying bullets instantly flew towards him. Kamita Kimi finally felt scared, his body twisted like an earthworm before he quickly crawled on the ground to escape Uncle Yu's attack range. The flying bullets chased after his direction, continuously triggering violent explosions. Bai Li Changqing saw this scene and envy was written all over his eyes. At one time, he hadn't given Uncle Yu a second thought, but now the other party possessed power that even surpassed him. Sure enough, having someone to carry is cool. Phew, I can't drag my feet either. Bai Li Changqing stared at Bodhidharma in the distance, gripped the wolf fang mace in his hand tightly, and with a furious roar, he directly rushed over. Chapter 1525 Agent. Uncle Yu and Bai Li Changqing dragged Bodhidharma and Kamita Kimi down, relieving a lot of pressure on the others. However, Bai Chunyu and the others were not yet able to completely resolve the threat posed by Purgatory Star. Chio Kagami kept using riotous starfire to attack the crowd indiscriminately. She removed explosives from her body and combined them with her ability to create even more wide-range attacks. It was fortunate that Fatty Sue's strength had been boosted so that he was able to block her attacks and prevent the crowd from being harmed. However, Woody's Star River shower field could not be maintained all the time. Purgatory Star had been in stealthy form, constantly destroying the floating cannons around them. Nowadays, they were in a dilemma. If they chose to kill over to Chio Kagami, not to mention getting close, they might leave the Star River shower's range and be attacked and killed by the Purgatory Star. However, continuing to maintain the status quo was nothing more than chronic death. Ninjas, one of the most bizarre ability users they had ever encountered. The only thing that Purgatory Star could call a weakness might be that the defense wasn't too strong. However, that complex ninjutsu and ninjutsu usability, coupled with the ability to stealthily attack and kill, and super fast speed, all made one's scalp feel numb. For a moment, Bai Chunyu, Wu Di and Fatty Su didn't have too good of an idea at all. At the critical moment, it was Fatty Su who had the bright idea. "We can ask for help." Wu Di glanced at him and said through clenched teeth, "Every single one of these people we came here has been fighting. The captain and the others are facing stronger opponents, so who has time to help us? It's better to think about relying on ourselves." Fatty Su, however, said, "No, there are still people who are not in the middle of the battle at this time." He tuned the communication channel to Yang Xinxin's side and sent out a signal for help. "Ms. Yang, help from the rivers and lakes." Soon, Yang Xinxin's cool voice rang out. "What situation have you encountered there?" Fatty Su quickly told Yang Xinxin about the situation at hand, asking if there was anything she could do to break the situation. Wu Di frowned and whispered, "Thought there was some good idea. What's the point of going to someone who isn't here for help with strategy?" The situation above the battlefield was changing rapidly, and Wu Di felt that this approach was simply meaningless. But Yang Xinxin just listened to Fatty Su's basic explanation and immediately said, "So, what gives you guys the biggest headache is still her stealth ability, right? Then, as long as we make it impossible for her to conceal her whereabouts, won't that be enough?" Fatty Su let out a bitter laugh. "Auntie, we've tried a lot of ways, but the enemy is very cunning. It's not that good to break her stealth." Yang Xinxin faintly said 3 words, "Fluorescent agent." Fatty Su's expression immediately froze on his face, not uttering a single word for a long time. Yes, why had they never thought about this kind of problem? There were times when something that looked complicated had an unusually simple solution. Fatty Su yelled, "Do you have any fluorescents on you? Bring them all to me." In order to facilitate their nighttime actions, they all had glow sticks with them, and of course, they also had fluorescents for marking. Hearing Fatty Su say this, several people instantly realized what he wanted to do. All of them couldn't wait to slap themselves twice, and immediately handed over the glow sticks and fluorescents on their bodies to Fatty Su. Fatty Su unwrapped the glow sticks and gathered all the fluorescents together. Then, he utilized his blizzard ability to set off a storm of ice and snow, waving these glowing potions in it. In the middle of the night, instantly a tornado glittering with blue fluorescence took shape on the mountainside of Mount Fudo. It was kinda pretty to look at. After Purgatory Star saw this scene, she immediately understood what Fatty Su and the others were planning to do, and was so angry that she gritted her teeth. As a ninja, stealth was her greatest advantageous ability, and once it was broken, it became impossible for her to attack and kill. She had to quickly back away from these fluorescent agents. However, these agents flew with the wind, waving in all directions around her, flying everywhere like willow flakes. There was no way to completely avoid being touched. Unless Purgatory Star left this area completely, otherwise she would have to face the problem of exposing her position. For a time, she was caught in a dilemma. In front of Mount Fudo, Flower rode a horse and stopped the road up the mountain dead in its tracks. The 100 Demon Night Parade did not attack specific targets, but would indiscriminately attack all creatures that appeared. Now under Mount Fudo, almost all the demons and ghosts of the entire Edo had gathered. The 3 great ghost kings, Slick Ghost, Big Tengu and Inagami, were in the lead and fought with Flower. Flower's roar shook the heavens, and its high-energy particle beams were like a crimson scalpel, mercilessly cutting through the demons, capable of killing a large number of demons in just an instant. With it at his back, Zhang Yi was able to battle the evil demon to his heart's content. However, after actually facing the evil demon, Zhang Yi realized that he had underestimated the mutants of Neon. It was the first time that someone was able to receive one of his holy silver bullets head-on with his body and remain unharmed. Evil Demon spat out the bullet in his mouth, clapped his hands provocatively, and made a come-again gesture towards Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi slowly narrowed his eyes. What a strong defense. It's a bit interesting. Only, I wonder if he can withstand the divine realm netherworld cleansing that I unleashed with all my might. Right at this moment, at the edge of the battlefield, 3 figures wearing black hooded robes appeared on a cliff, quietly watching the battle. The 3 figures were illusory and silent, even Zhang Yi did not detect their presence. It was not like 3 people, but like 3 illusory projections. A black shadow said, "This fellow who came from the east seems to be very strong." The second black shadow said, "Someone from the Dragon Kingdom?" The third black shadow pondered for a moment, "It's possible." He looked down at Evil Demon, "It's probably similar to him who was raised by us. It's someone who was raised by the Dragon Kingdom. Otherwise, it's impossible for him to possess such a strong power." "An agent?" The first black shadow muttered, "Angel. Candidate." Zhang Yi stared at the evil demon in front of him as the other party arrogantly provoked him, signaling him to attack again. Zhang Yi switched to White Eagle and pointed his pistol diagonally at the evil demon child. The expression on evil demon's face instantly became more excited. "Ha ha! Come on, let's see if your attack can break my head." Zhang Yi pulled the trigger, and the holy silver bullet that contained powerful void energy cut through the void and shot directly towards the chest of the extremely evil demon. In an instant, the bullet reached his chest before it ruthlessly shot onto his skin and bones body. Ka-ching! Zhang Yi heard the sound of bones shattering, and the evil demon's body was like a broken sack as it was ruthlessly sent flying out.